y'all, Jamie here with Country Diggers, and we are back today with another episode of Pirates of the Florida Coast, Truths, Legends, and Myths by Robert Jacob. And today we'll be reading Chapter 8, Pirate Raids of the 1680's. So get ready. It's another pirate-filled adventure. All right. Chapter 10, Pirate Raids of the 1680's. In the late 16th century, Spain divided Florida into two provinces and began to establish dozens of Franciscan missions throughout each of them. Those provinces were named for the predominant Native American tribe living within each province. The Apache province was comprised of what is now the panhandle of Florida. The Timucua province extended across the middle of the state, running from the St. Johns River west to the Swanee River. On the northeast coast, the Mocama province began at the mouth of the St. Johns River at present-day Jacksonville, and extended north to St. Simon's Island in Georgia. The Wally province was located entirely in present-day Georgia and ranged from the Cumberland Island to St. Catherine's Island, located about 20 miles south of the city of Savannah. Each province contained about 15 and 40 individual missions and thousands of tribal villages. The English colony of Carolina was established in 1670 when the city of Charlestown was founded on the west bank of the Ashley River. As the population grew, the city was relocated to its present-day location, a few miles to the southwest and across the river. Serious problems began for the Spanish missions and for the people of St. Augustine in 1670. When the English established the colony of Carolina with the city of Charlestown as its capital, the Spanish didn't like it, but there was nothing they could do to drive the English out. For the main government back in Spain, there were too many other problems that took priority. Manuel Sandoa, the governor of Florida in St. Augustine, would just have to deal with the situation on his own. In 1671, Sandoa sent 25 soldiers to protect the mission Santa Catalina on St. Catherine's Island. That was their closest mission to Charlestown. But a far more critical concern in the 1670's was attack from the Westo Indians, who constantly raided both English plantations and Spanish missions. To defend the largest Spanish city in Florida, construction of a highly imposing fort began in 1672, named the Castillo de San Marcos. It took 23 years to complete. Today, the fort still exists in excellent condition as one of the nation's national parks. Charlestown desperately needed supplies and other goods that they couldn't get from England. Goods like cloth and tools. England severely limited trade with the colonies, and Carolina was no exception. The answer for the fledgling colony was pirates. With total disregard for English trade laws and tariffs, pirates could bring in all sorts of commodities to any settlement or port whose residents didn't mind dealing with them. Charlestown quickly became one of those ports, as pirate-friendly ports in the Caribbean were rapidly disappearing. Charlestown emerged as the best place to sell their stolen goods. By the early 1680s, the Carolina port of Charlestown had become a pirate haven. But these pirates were attracted to Charlestown for other reasons than just being welcome. Nearby Florida was developing an ideal place to conduct raids and to attack shipping. As St. Augustine grew, the number of ships carrying valuable cargo increased along the Florida East Coast. The Franciscan missions along the east coast of Florida didn't have very many gold or silver valuables, but they did have substantial amounts of food. Each mission had several large ranches associated with them, as well as extensive farms. A portion of the commodities was distributed among the natives, but the rest were sent to other Spanish colonies that were in great need of food. In many of the Caribbean colonies, farmland was primarily used to grow valuable cash crops such as sugarcane and tobacco. Those colonies had to rely on other colonies to produce crops that they could eat, such as grain, rice, and vegetables. Florida was perfectly situated to supply them and become one of the primary suppliers of food for the Spanish in the Caribbean. Beginning around 1680, pirates began raiding Spanish missions for the food they had, not just to eat themselves, but to sell in Charlestown. This was encouraged by the residents of the English colony for two reasons. First of all, they needed the food, but more importantly, they intended on eventually extending their territory southward into Florida, and weakening the Spanish missions seemed like a good start. These small attacks were devastating to the local Spanish economy, but a far greater impact was the loss of their supply ship, which was carrying the city's real situado. The real situado is spelled Sitouado. It was a Spanish term that referred to a year's amount of food, supplies, and money intended to feed, equip, and pay salaries of a detachment of soldiers. Okay, once a year, Spain sent a ship carrying food and supplies for the fort, as well as all the money needed to pay the salaries of the soldiers. This shipment was called the Real Situado and was large enough to cover expenses and needs for an entire year. In 1682, the supply ship was captured by English privateers and everything was taken. But pirate raids on Florida were limited to just the East Coast. weren't just limited to the East Coast. Jamaica was in need of slaves for its plantations. In the 1680s, English pirates raided Appalachia villages along Florida's Appalachia Bay on the northwest coast, looking to capture some of the natives and turn them into slaves. Spanish missions in the region also attracted pirates in search of food. The Spanish had established a mission on the St. Mark's River back in 1639. Aware of potential pirate raids, the mission was reinforced by a wooden stockade built at the confluence of the St. Mark's River and the Waukulla River. Even though it was constructed of wood, the walls were painted to look like stone in an attempt to make the tiny fortification appear stronger than it was. In the early 1680s, the French were also operating in the area, looking to establish a colony near the mouth of the Mississippi River. A band of French privateers located the fort of San Marcos and decided to approach. At first, the fake stone walls fooled them, and they debated over making an attack. But eventually they realized the deception and quickly took the fort. They held the friars for ransom, and a message was sent to the main Spanish mission in the province, Mission San Luis de Apalache in present-day Tallahassee. But Franciscan friars are vowed to poverty, and the mission held no money. When the reply came explaining the situation, the French politely released the hostages and left. The English weren't so kind. A year earlier, in 1681, English privateers raided the nearby ranch of La Chua. They returned in 1882 and conducted a second raid. Then, after the French left the fort of San Marcos de Apalache intact, the English privateers attacked it and destroyed the fort completely. After 15 years, a band of English pirates once again decided to attempt to attack St. Augustine itself, just like Robert Serrell had done. On the morning of April 5th, 1683, several small boats loaded with pirates quietly approached the port. Spanish soldiers were far more observant than in the past, and the boats were spotted. But the pirates also spotted the Spanish and decided that their plan wouldn't work. They rowed back to their ships and sailed north. Not wanting to leave Florida waters empty-handed, they attacked several Spanish missions, including San Juan del Puerto near present-day Jacksonville and San Felipe on Cumberland Island. English pirate attacks on missions in the Wally province intensified, and by 1684 the province was nearly destroyed. In August that same year, Governor Marquez Cabrera of Florida managed to persuade most of the Wally and Macoma Indians to relocate to Mission San Pablo, south of the St. Johns River, for protection. In October of 1684, English privateers raided Wally again and destroyed Mission San Juan del Puerto near the mouth of the St. Johns River and Mission Talipo on Sapala Island. They also raided other missions and villages throughout the Wally province. Spanish soldiers did not engage the large force, and the entire population retreated inland, leaving the villages to be plundered and destroyed. The local inhabitants decided to follow the governor's guidance and went south. By the spring of 1685, Wally as a Spanish province disappeared. During one of those raids, one of the English pirates was captured. Upon questioning, he revealed that there was a pirate fleet at Charlestown that was comprised of a combination of English, French, and Dutch buccaneers. This fleet was under the command of Michael Sieur de Grammont, who was among the most successful buccaneers in the Caribbean. A French privateer operating out of San Domingo, Grammont was of noble blood. It is believed that he turned to piracy after a duel forced him to leave France. During his 15-year career, he led several successful raids on the Spanish ports of Maracaibo, Gibraltar, Triagua, Lagoria, Cumana, Puerto Cabela, and Veracruz. His partner in this venture was another French buccaneer named Nicolas Brigot. In St. Augustine, the rumors of the impending attack were confirmed in February 1686, when a Dutch merchant from New York arrived in port. He knew about the fleet at Charlestown and told the Spanish authorities. The city went on alert, but the pirates never arrived. In April 1686, while sailing towards St. Augustine, Gramont's fleet ran into a storm. Brigot's ship was wrecked on Mantanzas Inlet, where he and his survivors were found by Spanish soldiers and executed. Gramont's ship is presumed to have sunk at sea, as he was never seen again. In retaliation of all the English attacks, Spanish authorities in Cuba authorized Spanish privateer Alejandro Thomas de Leon to attack Charlestown. In May 1686, de Leon arrived at St. Augustine with 2 ships, then sailed towards the Carolina coast. He decided not to attack Charlestown as it was too well defended, so he chose to attack another nearby settlement located at present-day Port Royal, South Carolina. However, the settlers were warned and fled to Charlestown. The Spanish burned the settlement to the ground, then raided and destroyed several nearby plantations. During those raids, the Spanish recovered some religious artifacts previously taken by the English. They also took all the possessions of the plantation owners. On their way back to St. Augustine, the 2 vessels ran into a storm. De Leon's ship sank, and he drowned while the other ship managed to make it to port. Other English raids in Florida continued through 1686, but those attacks began to create a political problem for the colony's governor, Joseph Morton. Most of the colony's citizens were in favor of the attacks and wanted them to continue, believing that they might eventually take control of more land to the south. But the governing Grand Council and the colony's proprietors, who actually ruled the colony, feared Spanish reprisals and wanted peace. In July 1687, the governor was replaced by James Colton, who sided with the proprietors, and all pirate raids quickly ended. All hostility on both sides temporarily ended in 1688, when England and Spain became allies in the War of the Grand Alliance against France. All right, next time we will do Chapter 11, Ranson's Miracle. All right, hope you enjoyed. See you back soon.